How's it going, all you mentees? Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And join me today for your overview of these hardcovers from Dark Horse Comics. Stay tuned. And welcome back, everybody. Before getting started, I do want to give a huge thank you to the folks at Dark Horse for sending us copies of these books. Now, all of these books are already out in the direct market and book market. I know some of them have been out for about a month or two, depending on where you live, or some of my viewers have had them. But by now, they should all be out. And what we're looking at here are a couple library editions, the new Deluxe slipcase edition of Sin City, and this new printing of this Shinjuku book. But before I go any further, I always like to remind people to smash that like button, please. Very small thing you can do, and it goes a long way for us on the channel. So, in the description of the video, I will put the timestamps in case you're curious about a book. If there's any kind of spoilers, for example, Tales from Harrow County, I'll warn you ahead of time, like what you should have read, in case there's any spoilers in there. Okay, let's go ahead and start. Let's talk about this Crime Patrol hardcover here. So here is Crime Patrol, the EC Archives, and I'll be taking a little closer look at each of the spines, or all the spines together rather, about halfway through the video. That will also be in the timestamp. Here's what's collected in here. The Crime Patrol issues 7 through 11. That's right, EC was going through some changes. Now, underneath the dust jacket, they've done this for all of their EC archives, is the exact same thing that's on the dust jacket. The dust jacket on the flaps itself kind of have a little bit of praising for the EC archives, what these comics were, and a little bit of behind the scenes of the Gaines family, mainly MC Gaines and William Bill Gaines. And of course, Dark Horse Comics down there. Now, these are books I had not read until getting this collection. I think this one came out in November, December. I ended up getting it in December from Dark Horse. And I got finally a chance to read it. And while it's not as good, I'll just go ahead and say this, it's not as good or what you expect from the quality of EC comics like shock and suspense stories or any of the horror lines. You can kind of see where they were going with this. They were still trying out new things. Here's your table of contents. You have an introduction by Grant Gaiman and a foreword by Brian Michael Bendis, who of course a lot of people know because of his crime noir, or of course his superhero comics like Ultimate Spider-Man and New Avengers. Here's your introduction by Grant Gaiman. And when I was reading this, I thought, I could have sworn I've read this before, and I think it is the one that they print in all of the EC archives. Here's the foreword by Brian Michael Bendis talking about this particular stories collected in here, and the sadness, and I'm sure, I'm glad that he agrees with me, the sadness of the writers and the uncredited creators that went on back then. I mean, this happened everywhere, whether it was here, or whether it was at Marvel, or Timely, or DC Comics, or Fawcett Comics. It didn't matter. Like, sometimes they didn't credit the colorist, of course, but sometimes the artists or the writers don't get credit, so it's lost to time, and that's sad. So, I actually really like his introduction, talking about praising collections like this, because there's really no other place you're going to find things like this unless you own the original comics. And not enough people talk about these type of stories for it to be out there in the evergreen, if you will. I mean, this isn't things like X-Men or Spider-Man or Batman and Wonder Woman or Superman. These are talking about Crime Patrol stories. So in here, you're going to find the works of MC Kiefer, Ed Walden, and Ann Brewster, Stan Ash, Johnny Craig, Sheldon Moldoff. Gardner Fox has a couple stories in here. That's right, Gardner Fox, who, of course, built a huge reputation over at DC Comics. Now, these are the color restorations that they've been using for all of the EC archives. Whether it was actually Dark Horse publishing them or Gemstone Publishing, this is the color restoration that they decided to use. It bothers some people. For me, I think I've just gotten used to it, and it's the only way I can get them in color, because there was the black and white Gemstone Publishing collections that came out in the box sets, and they're beautiful books, but those are all in black and white, and I wanted them to be in color. I think the annuals collected these in color, but I don't know if they ever got around to doing these. So what I meant by an evolution is that you can kind of see the artist and the writing evolve through here. It's actually a pretty cool thing to witness. That's why I love going back to these Golden Age and Silver Age books. Whether I appreciate the stories or not, I love to see the evolution of a writer and artist. And yeah, I mean, you see the same thing with like Steve Ditko's art or Jack Kirby's artwork. You can kind of see them tuning the way that they actually, the way that we remember them. But I feel like that about some of the artists in here. And I think from this particular collection, you get no better representation of that than Johnny Craig. And Johnny Craig, of course, went on to do a bunch of stuff for EC Comics and stayed around for a long time. And also Sheldon Moldoff. You see some of his early work in here. And I think he went over to do Batman, if I'm not mistaken. I remember when I was doing some EC overviews that I was looking up exactly what he went on to do. But yeah, having some early Johnny Craig in here and some early Al Feldstein, just a nice touch to this collection. But yes, these are all crime noir stories, or crime patrol stories, rather. Crooks, bad guys, not getting away with things. Sometimes they are. No real supernatural elements until you get to towards the end of the book. You start seeing maybe a little bit of it in there. I thought that was really cool. And then what other shock and suspense stories, or what? Are they reprinting that one? Oh, this is a trade paperback. Okay. I got excited. I thought they were going to reprint them. So yes, they aren't publishing these after the first printing in hardcover format. They move on to the paperbacks. Now, this one retails for $49.99. It does have 176 pages. Just looking at that eye right there. It is sewn binding, and the paper stock is this thick, glossy paper. Now we're moving on to something that could have been in the EC Comics line back in the 50s. Maybe. This is Blackwood, the library edition. So these books, of course, are oversized, and if you ever want to see the differences in the sizes of the books, just check out the channel. If you, I'll leave a link up here, up at the top. But it's the different collected editions. Now, something to note is that the dust jacket underneath it is identical to what is on here, with the exception of the ISBN that's missing. But everything else, like a little bit about the book and stuff, that's all in here. And the flaps don't really have anything other than that pattern right there. So what exactly is this? Well, first let's talk about the book. Oh my goodness. Some bright neon green there. The book retails for $39.99. It has 232 pages. And this collects Blackwood Volume 1, which is 4 issues, and Blackwood Volume 2, which is another 4 issues. Written by the phenomenal Evan Dorkin. Now, Evan Dorkin, I'm sure some of you all are familiar with because of his Beast of Burden. But for me, it's always been Milk and Cheese. That's what I really like about his stuff. Andy Fish and Veronica Fish are the artists on the book, and Andy Fish is the letterer. The Morning After, which Volume 2 is called, is lettered by Greg McKenna. But the colors in this, like, it's a really strange book because it has definitely that horror occult feel to it. Almost like a Lovecraftian feel. I don't want to say... I'm trying to stay away from the idea of comparing everything to Harry Potter. Like, if you've watched my manga overviews, I'm like, oh yeah, Naruto is like Harry Potter, but with ninjas. Yeah. There were things before Harry Potter, and I always forget that. But it is a school where you go and learn magic, and we follow a particular set of characters. At the very beginning, we're left with somebody getting killed. We don't know exactly what that is. It's not revealed until the ending of the first story arc. And then we meet our, I guess, main character. This is Ren Valentine. She's an edgy young woman with a dark past. And she's enrolled in Blackwood College, hence the name of the book. So, in Blackwood College, she ends up meeting a couple of other characters. She ends up meeting Reiko, she meets Dennis, and Steven. And they all become really fast friends. Now, there's another character who will play a bigger role later on, and that is this guy right here, Jamar, and he will end up joining them. I will say that this one kind of had me guessing as to what's going to happen, where it was going to go, because there's a couple of twists that I didn't see coming. So I'm going to showcase a little bit of the artwork here and then move on to the second part of the story. It does have a giant well in here, and they're all investigating people disappearing. There's a supposed curse at the school that you can never leave. But what really stood out to me is this amazing artwork and colors. They're very vibrant, and because it has that occult horror feel, like, it kind of lures you into a state of false security. You think like, oh, this is really cartoony, but there are some really nightmarish stuff in here. Not just in the story, or not in the way of the story, but also in the art. So showcasing a little bit of the art here. The twist comes when something unexpected happens that I was like, oh, that was abrupt and quick. What the hell? I didn't see that happening. Surely that's going to get resolved later and everything's going to be fine. No? So I don't know if there's a continuation of this. I don't know if Dorkin is writing anymore. But what this really feels like, oh, that's what I was saying. What it compare it to. Because I hate it when I compare things to, like, Harry Potter. But it feels more like Scooby-Doo meets Strange Academy with a more adult twist. More of a Lovecraftian feel to it. That's what this feels like. And this being a library edition, it does come with a bunch of extras. So all the way in the back, you have the sketchbook of the characters. I didn't even talk about the two-headed monkey. Layouts of the school. There's thumbnails, and then there's variant covers back here. Some really cool variant covers, including covers that were never used. Now, these have been printed, of course, in single issue, and there's been 2 trade paperbacks of the books. But this is the first time that it's had a library edition. And for anybody that's been collecting these library editions, oh my gosh, they're gorgeous. This is a little behind the scenes, because they actually use photos of the creators in the background, so it's really cool. I believe these are the unused covers here, if I'm not mistaken. Blackwood Gargoyles, variant covers. There's Peach Momoko, and one by Andy Fish. And some more of that neon green. Call it maybe ectoplasm? As far as the binding of the book, it is sewn binding and not much of an eye. It is printed in this really thick, glossy paper. Not all of the library editions are, so it lays over really nice, though. It didn't have a problem with it becoming like a mousetrap, if you will. So, that's what it looks like there. Now, no ribbon, but $39.99. And it comes with a dust jacket. Shinjuku. This is the second edition. And what's really interesting about this is that, here, let me give you a little size comparison, because this isn't a library edition. This is a kind of a, looks like the dimensions of the art book, so I wanted to compare it to the size of a trade paperback, which is the trim size of a comic book. This one's really interesting because I remember when this came out. I remember reading it years ago, and this is the second edition. It's practically the same thing. I think there's a couple of extras in here. Not adding to the story, I don't think, from what I remember. But it was originally released in hardcover format. By the way, this one is $49.99. And this is one that is not really a graphic novel, but it's more, I don't want to call it a picture book because that sounds so kiddish. But it definitely has art and then like a prose part right here. Think of something like the Yoshitaka Amano, who actually draws all of this, and Greg Rucka, Elektra and Wolverine, or Sandman Endless Nights by Neil Gaiman and Yoshitaka Amano. Maybe that's the way that Yoshitaka Amano likes to draw, because, you know, panels can kind of get in the way of storytelling, but it's a prose, and it's a pretty quick read. What's interesting is that this takes place in the future being 2020. So this, of course, came out 10 years ago. It was written by Christopher Morrison, who goes by Mink. I believe that's this name they're using, written by Mink, and yes, illustrated by Amano. 184 pages, $49.99. It's printed on this thick matte paper, but it tells the story of Shinjuku, the city in Japan. It's a very popular city. Anybody that's been there, my wife and I took many pictures there. But in this possible future, there is a drug that's going around in the black market, and there are 3 Yakuza groups that are trying to control this particular city. All part of, well, it's all part of Tokyo's underworld, if you will. Now, we meet the character of Daniel Legend, who is a bounty hunter. He's like a licensed bounty hunter that he is searching for his sister. What was her name? Angela, I think. Yeah, who disappeared a few years ago, and she disappeared into Tokyo's underworld. Now, he ends up running into the mysterious She, who's one of the Yakuza. Now, Daniel ends up making a deal with She. He's trying to work off a death with She, and he becomes a fighter in this underground death matches, while trying to get himself out and find his sister. And that's what this story is. Does it have supernatural or kind of superhero elements? Not really. It's mainly a possible future, 2020, or our past. And it's about this drug named Obake and people taking them. Now, it does do a little bit of sci-fi, like diving into some sci-fi elements. So it starts off like this big detective story, but then we see some sci-fi elements in there. And the least I say about it, the better. And oh my gosh, the artwork. My goodness. The story, I'll be honest, it's okay. It's one that you've seen before, but the characters feel a little bit flat in this. But the saving grace, my goodness, is this beautiful artwork by Yoshitaka Amano. Of course, from Final Fantasy characters like that he designed, Vampire Hunter D, and I just mentioned, yeah, the Elektra and Wolverine, and the Neil Gaiman, what was it, the Sandman, was it Dream Hunters, I think? But he's worked on those particular projects, but he's just an amazing artist. One whose art I followed for years, decades now. Now, as far as the binding of this book, because we did talk about how many pages it has and the thick matte paper, it is sewn binding. There's what the eye looks like. The book holds over really well. It helps that there's a few splash pages, or spread pages rather. Here, let's not go all the way in the back. Here, we'll just show this part, how it lays over. There we go. Oh, and I forgot to mention that it comes with a leaflet. How dare I not mention that, because it does come sealed in plastic. So you do get a leaflet with it, and that's where you'll find the ISBN as well as there. Alright, it's time to check out these spines from all these collected editions that are out, or at least on this overview. But here's what they look like, and of course on the other side of the slipcase it looks a little bit different. Tales from Harrow County. Now this is the one where I'm going to say, maybe if you've not read Harrow County, jump onto the next overview, because there are some spoilers for what some of the characters, because this takes place 10 years after the events of Harrow County, and I don't want to spoil even who's in this book, because you know, when you're reading something, you want to see if the characters survive, you want to be surprised. I'm not going to talk about how exactly what happened at the end or anything like that, but there are characters that show up through here that were in Harrow County, and I don't want to spoil that for anybody, so just in case, minor spoilers. Okay, let's keep going. Actually, first of all, this is how it looks next to the Harrow County Library editions, and I hope one day we get those reprinted, because they're beautiful books. And I know some of them are in print, but just to have the whole set, and there's going to be more of these too. Now, much like those Harrow County Library editions, this does come with a dust jacket, and I love the fact that underneath the dust jacket is a different image. I love it. Love it. The feel of this is so different than the other hardcovers. It's not a leather feel. It's not a cloth feel. It's just like a soft feel to it. I don't know exactly what it is. This one retails for $39.99, and it has 224 pages. And it does collect Tales from Harrow County 1 through 8. So you've got Death's Choir and Fair Folk. Those are the two story arcs that are in here. 1 through 4 are Death's Choir, and 5 through 8 are Fair Folk. Cullen Bunn and Tyler Crook are both writing the story, and Cullen Bunn is scripting it. This time around, though, the art is by Naomi Franquist for the Death's Choir, and then Fair Folk is by Emily Schnall. I will say, Naomi Franquist, my goodness, her art is freaking tremendous. It does definitely have that feel of Tyler Crook, for sure. But this, and if you're noticing something that they do in Harrow County, I love when they do this, and that's the way they introduce the book. I had a little bit of a hard time reading that, Tales from Harrow County. I didn't see it at first. I saw the Tales from, and I'm like, oh my gosh, do I need to put glasses on? Because I can't really see that. Look at those colors. So 10 years have passed since the events of Harrow County. And we see a very familiar face here. This is the character of Bernice. And Bernice was friends with Emmy. And, well, I guess I'm not going to go into spoilers in case you haven't read Harrow County, but I will say she did survive the events of Harrow County. Now, in this particular year, this all takes place in the 40s, so we got World War II going on. As a matter of fact, that is a big part of the story. We have the mailman coming around, and he's just delivering bad news to families. You know, people have been killed overseas. Something horrible is happening. You know, then people are getting letters of their dead loved ones. Now, she doesn't really think of Emmy, not here, but from time to time she does, and you can find out a little bit more, especially in the second story or at the end of this one. I loved it. There's Priscilla, her little goblin. That's right. So she's back and living with her, and they have such an awesome relationship. So she starts noticing more and more people are dead. Now, Priscilla's not the only character in this. We also have Georgia right here. Now, Bernice and Georgia are together. That is her girlfriend. And it says a lot about the character of Bernice, because we are talking about the 40s. We're talking about an interracial couple and a same-sex couple. So, especially in the South, Bernice don't give a crap. And it's funny because if you go back and read Harrow County, that's the type of character she would become. One that just doesn't care, doesn't follow the rules. So what ends up happening in the story is that, again, I love it. Tales from Harrow County. Same thing that they did in the original. Is that something is making the dead rise from their graves. There's ghosts walking around everywhere. And it's up to Bernice to figure out what is going on. Who is behind the hauntings. These haunts. Sorry. Haints. That's what it is. Sorry, I forgot I'm talking about Harrow County. That's the first story arc. The second story has more of Georgia in it because she wants to go on this adventure. You see, the fairy folk from the center of the earth have come out of the earth and have taken Priscilla with them. Why and where they've taken them to the center of the earth. Never mind. But why, you can find out. And she goes on a journey with Georgia against her will because she doesn't want to take her to get Priscilla back. Again, it's the type of character that she would become. And in this, you get to find out a little more of what happened to Emmy in the pages of Harrow County, or afterwards, rather. Not going to go into detail, because I think there's going to be more of this. I will say that I really liked the artwork towards in the first half. I thought this was phenomenal. I was hoping that Naomi would stick around. Not that there's anything wrong with Emily's art. Let's go back to that for a second. Because she's able to tell a good story. Her composition's nice. The layouts of the frames are great. It's just the colors. My goodness, of this. This really reminds me of Tyler Crook. And they're both on their way to becoming just phenomenal. Or they are. They are really great artists. But my goodness, I think they're going to be up there with Tyler Crook. And Tyler Crook has grown on me as one of my favorite artists. Just because of his work here. And his work, of course, in Black Hammer. Now, there's a lot of extras because this is another library edition. So you get character designs back here. I'm not going to show them all. Ideas for the covers. And there is more of these particular stories. There are more of these particular stories that are coming out. I believe the third trade paperback is either out or coming out. So I hope for more of these library editions. And again, I hope for a reprint of those original Harrow County library editions. The book is printed on this really thick, glossy paper. And it is sewn binding. And the best part about this... There we go. Ribbon! You all know I love those. But yes, let's look at that eye. Here's that eye. 224 pages. $39.99. And ribbon! Now we're looking at Black Hammer. Or The World of Black Hammer. Volume 4. Here's what the back looks like. This one is $49.99. And it does have a dust jacket. Underneath the dust jacket, very similar to the other books. Unlike Harrow County, you do have the same design on it. Now, this is what the dust jacket looks like. Over here, a little bit about Jeff Lemire. Dean Ormston, who is the co-creator of Black Hammer, and some praise for Black Hammer. Now, this is another one. If you've not read Black Hammer, what are you waiting for? It's so good, because this is set in the world of Black Hammer, and it's one of those that, do you need to have read Black Hammer to enjoy this? The first story, The Skull Digger and Skeleton Boy, is so different that probably not, but I think you would benefit from it. So let's go ahead and crack this open. Very interesting color there. Oh, it's the color of the logo. The World of Black Hammer. This one has 296 pages. And the first story we're going to be talking about is the Skull Digger and Skeleton Boy. So that one is written by Jeff Lemire. Tonsi Zonjic is the artist on this. And then The Unbelievable Teens, there's a little short story by Jeff Lemire and Ray Fox with David Rubine doing the artwork. It's like, I think like 5, maybe 8 pages. And then The Unbelievable Unteens, Jeff Lemire and Tyler Crook. Yeah, that's right, Tyler Crook is back for this. This is a very long story here, The Skull Digger and Skeleton Boy. And it's a very interesting take on the idea of Batman and Robin. I mean, obviously it borrows heavily, including like Crime Alley shots from Frank Miller's masterpiece. But the difference is that Skull Digger actually kills people. He's not like Batman. He's not a guy that's trying to avenge the death of his parents. He actually kills people. So he's more like the Punisher. Maybe the skull has a lot to do with that. And he takes on a ward, of course, this young boy that becomes his sidekick named Skeleton Boy. And that's what the first story is. I mean, there's a character in here called Grim Jim who is very much like your character of the Joker. So there's a lot of similarities. But what I really enjoyed about this was Sonjic's drawings. It's very interesting visual choices that he makes here. Because I think the colorings that they're using throughout the book really highlight Lemire's story. I love Tyler Crook, and I think it fits for things like Harrow County and what you're about to see here. But for this, I don't think it would have worked. So I think this is a very specific type of artist. Very Mazzucchelli type of art from Batman Year One. I keep going back to that. So yes, think of like Frank Miller, but not Dark Knight 3 Frank Miller. Like Batman Year One Frank Miller, Dark Knight Frank Miller. That's what this story reminds me of. The next story, which again, there's a little bit of a, here we go, The Unbelievable Unteens, but there's a little bit of a lead up to it with Dragonfly. Of course, she's like your crypt keeper. She's the one that's going around introducing the stories. But you'll also get Jack Sabbath there, The Unbelievable Unteens. This is a really interesting story. And both of these don't really feel like they belong in the world of Black Hammer, just because of the tone of the story. I mean, other than the characters appearing here. So here we go. This is the one by Tyler Crook. So this is a really interesting story to me, because this feels like a love letter or a tribute to the 1980s Teen Titans comics or X-Men comics. And again, drawn by Tyler Crook, who's no stranger to the world of Black Hammer. He's actually drawn Black Hammer. What was it? The Colonel Weird story. And of course, Harrow County. But this is all about Jane Ito, who is a comic book artist, and she's, yes, at a convention here, signing books. And what she's writing and drawing is The Unbelievable Unteens. So this is at Spiral City's Comic-Con, and what ends up happening is that the ghost of Jack Sabbath comes to her and tells her that she's not actually drawing original ideas. What she's doing is drawing repressed memories. That she once was a character named Strobe, and that they were in a superhero team, and that they need to get the band back together again. And that's what this is, because all the characters are suffering through repressed memories. So we also have, who's in this one? I think there's Straka, who's like your, is she Russian, I think, or she Zek? I can't remember. There's Wraith in here, and like I mentioned, this guy right here, Jack Sabbath. But it's all about getting these characters back together again. Does it go the way that he intends it to go? No, not really. Not at all. Well, some of it. But again, beautiful artwork by Tyler Crook. All the way in the back is the sketchbook for Skulldigger there, and the sketchbook for the Unbelievable Unteens back here, including some layouts for the store and how Tyler Crook does his artwork. Hey, it's Colonel Weird illustration, and other Black Hammer books. Man, I love this universe. One of my top 10 favorite, and if you haven't seen that video, you need to watch the top 10 favorite Dark Horse comic. Oh, and one more thing. How does it fit into the shelf with all the other Black Hammer books? Well, it looks like this, right next to the other Black Hammer books. So this being the fourth one, there should be a third Black Hammer book and more of these World of Black Hammer books, but we'll have to wait for those to come out in library editions, or at least I will. Last but certainly not least is Sin City, Brews, Broads, and Bullets. This is the latest of the Deluxe slipcase editions. Let's get this out of the book case here. So the slipcase again, coming with a little portfolio piece. This time around, I think it's Marv, if I'm not mistaken. And it would help if I... There we go. Yeah, it is. There's Marv right there by Frank Miller. So it's a nice portfolio piece, like the other Sin City books. And in that slipcase, this one retailing again for $99.99, and it has 160 pages. And it's like the other hardcovers. It's got that soft touch, matte finish, the foil stamping, and then, of course, those gilded page edges there. Very nice touch. I love those. This is one of the most obscure collections of Sin City, because we are talking about Volume 6, Boost, Broads, and Bullets. It's a bunch of short stories is what this is. Some of them fit into the chronological order of Sin City, and some of them I still have the hardest time trying to fit in where they would take place. There's Silent Night is one of my favorite ones. You're going to see characters that have been previously introduced. You're going to see some new characters here, and you're going to see some characters that you're like, who the hell was that? Now, this one has mature content, like all the other Sin City books. But I feel like this one, I also have to give like a little trigger warning about incest and abuse. So that's all I will say. Not a fan of that. Skip to the next book, which isn't another book, but just hit that like button before you leave. But yes, this does have a ribbon. Yeah, this is a collection of, here, let's skip a little bit here, of short stories. Some of them are 3 to 4 pages long. Some of them are a little bit longer, but they're all little short stories by Frank Miller. It kicks off with Another Saturday Night. Let's look at that one here, which is a story about Marv. He wakes up in the middle of a mess and can't remember what's going on, which we've kind of seen before. And with that, it goes into a series of little flashbacks as to what's happened to him. Then we get the, what is this, Fat Man and Little Boy, which of course are nicknames of the bombs, but this case is a couple of hitmen that are, what is this guy's name? Douglas, I think, Schlub, if I'm not kidding, and Bert? No, I think his name is Bert Schlub, and he's Douglas Clump. But those are the characters that are portrayed in there. I love Silent Night. This is one of my favorite ones. It's a silent comic story, just featuring Marv walking around in the snow and telling you to be good. I don't know what the hell that means. Is he breaking the fourth wall? Who was he talking to? But yes, it's stories like this. There's nudity, violence in here, and sexual situations. But this one's just so good. Man, look at that. Look at the contrast right there. And let's keep going a little bit with other little short stories in here. There is some color. You got pink and you got a little bit of blue later on, and then some red. There we go. So pictures like that. And then, of course, some red right there. All the way in the back is the gallery. Each are featured in the original one-shots. There, and some covers for some trades. This is the one that was dedicated to Will Eisner. Of course, he's a big fan of Will Eisner, and of course, his art style. And some gorgeous pieces. We got one more, Hell and Back. I may do an overview of all 7 of them and the way they look together when I get that one in. But, ribbon! That, as they say, oh, I love the quotes too. If I can bring myself to murder the only man I've ever loved, I can do anything. Blue eyes. Now, that, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing any of these books, check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltscomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcondition at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the build, and the page count of each of these books. Let me know in the comments down below which ones you're picking up, which ones you're collecting, what you hope Dark Horse ends up reprinting in hardcover format, or what you hope they end up collecting in hardcover format. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. Everyone stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.